Right, hi everyone, Tia here. So last week when we started IELTS writing task 1, we didn't have time to finish all the different types of task 1 types for academic writing. So for tomorrow's lesson, or today, if you're watching this on Saturday, we have to focus on task 2. So this is going to be a video lesson where you can watch, and we're going to finish task 1 in this video lesson. So we're going to cover talking about diagrams, processes, and how to write about maps. Okay, so processes and maps. So please watch this video. It'll be about half an hour where we finish task 1, and then we're going to do task 2 in our online lesson on Saturday morning. So let's get started. I'm going to share the screen with you. How this is going to work is I'm going to explain these 2 different types of tasks, and we're going to go through the worksheets and the activities together. Because it's not live, what I'll do is I'll explain the activity, and then you can pause and write down your answers in your notebook, and then play the video again to check the answers with me. Okay, so I'll tell you when to pause and when we're going to check the answers. So first of all, we'll start by looking at diagrams, which is talking about processes. So this is another type of task 1. So whenever you have a diagram and you need to describe it, what you're actually doing is describing a process. Okay. The first thing to understand about this is that sometimes you might not recognize the diagram that you can see. Okay, it might be something that you've never seen before and you don't recognize any of the things in the diagram. Don't worry about that too much. You should be able to understand what's happening just by reading the heading, by looking at the different pictures. So even if it's something that you don't have any knowledge about, you should still be able to write about the process just from what you can see. So this diagram that we have here is about how to make recycled paper from old newspaper. And even if you've never done this before, just by looking at the different pictures, you'll be able to understand the process and the different stages of this process. So we can see here that there's 9 stages. So before you start writing anything, you should spend a few minutes just studying the diagram. And there's some things that you can look for. So first of all, the title. This will tell you what the process is about. The second thing to look for is any numbers or words on the diagram. So for example, here are some numbers: 200 milliliters, 1 hour, 100 milliliters, 24 hours. So this will give you some information about what's happening. The next thing to look for is any words that they put, like electric mixer, mesh, rolling pin, tray. So these are important. These are words that you can use, and you should use them in order to describe the process. Okay. And there may be words that they don't expect you to know, like they don't expect you to know what this is called, so they give you the word. If they give you the word, use it. You don't need to paraphrase. You can use the words that they give you. All right, so 3 things to look for: the title, any numbers, and any words that you can see. Also have a look for, they might give you numbers for the different stages, and this will help you. Obviously, this is what happens first, and this is what happens last. Okay, so study it just so you can understand what is happening. The second thing is to think about what verbs you can use to describe what's happening at each stage. So here are some words at the bottom of the page, and we're going to use these words, these verbs, to describe what is happening. So this is something that you can do in the exam as well. So I'd like you to pause the video now, and I want you to try and match these verbs to the correct picture. So for each picture, write down the best verb. If there's 2 parts to the picture, like this one or number 8, you can write 1 verb for each part. Okay, so please pause the video now and match the verbs to the correct picture. Right, so once you finish, you can check the answers with me. So I'll go through them. For picture 1, there's a few different options that we could use. And I'll just underline them. So either we could use tear. Okay, that's probably the best option, to tear the pieces. So picture 2, there's 2 different parts. The first part, what you're doing is either pouring the water, or you can use add to add the water. For the next part of the picture, we could use leave. All right, we leave it in the bowl for 1 hour. For picture 3 with the electric mixer, again, there's 2 verbs we could use, either mix or beat. Okay. The next one over here, again, we could either use pour or we could use add. For this picture, stage number 5, again, we could use mix. For number 6 with the mesh, there's a few that we could use. So what we're doing is we're putting the mesh underneath this mixture that we have over here. So either we could say to place, okay, place it under, maybe put it under, or to slide it under. So any of those would be fine. In number 7, now we are first lifting the mesh up and then we're draining the water out. Okay, let's go here to number 5. So what we're doing first of all is placing it into the newspaper and then we're pressing the water out. Okay, and the last one in number 9, we're leaving it to dry. So we could use both of these verbs here. All right, there's one left, soak. I forgot this one. So which one do you think this matches with? And I would say that soak matches with this picture over here. Okay, we're leaving it to soak. So we can use leave with soak, leave to soak, or leave to dry. Okay, so sometimes we can use 2 verbs together. Okay, great. So that's something that you can do. Think about which verbs best describe what's happening at this stage in the process. Okay. So as I said, you get labels on the diagram, words that they give you. Okay, so it's best to use these. So let's have a look at this over here. What we're going to do is try and complete these sentences with either a word from the diagram or a word from your own knowledge. So again, please pause the video and fill in the answers. So for each of these gaps, either use one of the words from the diagram or a word from your own knowledge to complete the sentence. Right, once you finish, you can play and let's complete it together. So you'll need an old newspaper and a something to hold the mixture. Okay, so we can see what we have here is a bowl. So I think the best answer here would be bowl. And this is what we're starting with, okay? And then a something containing 250 milliliters. The best word here is jug. You may have said glass, but if it's something that has a handle and we use it for pouring, we call it a jug in English. Okay, number 2, and something is used to form the mixture into a pulp. So now we're looking at this over here. So the word we want is on the diagram, electric mixer. And you can see there's 2 verbs here. We have the word mixture and pulp. So these are words that you can use. When we have the water and the newspaper mixed together, we call it a mixture. So when talking about this over here, we can refer to it as the mixture. Water and paper, when it's wet, we also refer to that as a pulp. So if you know these words, you can use them. Okay, the next one, the pulp is poured into a, so it's talking about this, and we need the word tray. Something is used to lift it out the water, so this picture over here. Then we need the word mesh. Okay, and as something is used to flatten, so this picture here, and we need the word rolling pin. Okay, so what you can see is really important for describing a process is using the correct nouns and also using the correct verbs to describe your process. So there's enough information here for you to talk about it, even if you've never heard of it before. All right, let's go back to the main worksheet. Okay, so now we're going to have a look at how we can put the sentences together. So remember that you need to organize your writing well. And that means putting things in paragraphs, also putting things in the correct order. So putting the stages in the correct order, but also it's how we connect things together. So we connect sentences together, usually by using linking words and linking devices. Okay, so remember that these three things are important. So often when we're talking about a process, the linking words that we can use describe what order they're happening in. So we use words like first, then, next, and at the end, finally. We can also use linking words like when as well to describe things that are happening in the process. So these words are really important. You should use them if you get a process for task one. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to match these sentences. So number 1 to 9, you have the first half of the sentence, and A to I, you have the second half. So you need to match the first half to the second half. And this will describe the whole process that we just looked at. So I'll do number 1 with you. Let's have a look. The diagram explains how to. So this sentence is our introduction sentence. So all you're doing is using that heading that we saw. You can paraphrase it for your introduction sentence. Okay, so quickly scan these. Which one do you think matches? The diagram explains how to. And the answer for this one is D, how to make recycled paper from old newspaper. Okay, so I'd like you to pause the video now and do the others by yourself. Okay, try and remember what stages they happened in and the nouns that we used. Okay, so pause the video and match, and then we'll play and check the answers together. Okay, so when you're ready, let's check the answers. I'm just going to tell you the letter. So number 1 is D. Number 2 matches with E. So first we tear. Number 3 matches with H. Then we leave the paper to soak. Number 4 matches with B. We beat the mixture. Number 5 matches with I. So we pour it into a tray and add further water. Number 6 matches with F. Okay, so we lift the pulp out, drain it. Number 7 matches with A. Place the mixture inside the newspaper. Number 8 matches with G. Press it down. And then number 9 finally matches with C. Okay, leave it to dry for at least 24 hours. So if you got any of those wrong, please just write the correct answers down, read it again so that you understand which order it happens in. Excuse me. Okay, so this is the order of the process. And we've written everything down. So this is what you need to do if you get this type of task in the IELTS exam. You just look at the process and describe what's happening at each stage in the process. Use these words first, then, next, finally, to help you organize it. All right, but let's have a look at the grammar or the sentence structure that we can use. So the sentences that we just looked at are similar to this over here. First, tear some newspaper into small strips. So this sentence, it starts with first, but then the next word is a verb, and it's the verb infinitive. Okay, so just the first form of the verb. And then after the verb comes the noun. So this type of sentence where we start with a verb is an instruction sentence. You're telling somebody what to do. So this is not the structure that we want to use for task 1, because in the question, it always says describe what you can see. So we don't want to give an instruction, we want to give a description. In order to give a description, we use the passive voice. Now we've looked at passive before, so you can also use passive for processes. So again, for processes, we start with always the subject, in passive. Okay, now look at what comes next. We use the verb to be, is or are. For this, we use present tense to describe a process. So even in passive, we're using present passive. So for task 1, describing a diagram, it's always in the present tense. All right, then what comes after the verb to be, and we should know this, is the verb 3. So this is a structure that you can use, that you should use when describing processes to give a description. So don't give an instruction like this, give a description. So let's practice writing the sentences in passive. So here are a few sentences from the task that we just looked at, and we're going to put them into passive. So the first thing to do is to look for what your subject should be. And sometimes you can have 2 passive structures in the same sentence. So here we have our subject, and here we have our verb. So we start the sentence with then, as before. And what comes next? Our subject. So we say then 250 milliliters of water. Okay, then we need our verb to be, is, and our verb 3 added. Okay, and. So I'd like you to try and complete this sentence. So pause the video, try and complete this sentence. Remember that again, you have a subject and you have a verb. Okay, so pause the video, complete the sentence in the passive. So when you're ready, let's check together. So 250 milliliters of water is added, and the paper subject is, verb 3 left, to soak, and the rest can stay the same. So even in one sentence, we can have 2 passive structures. Okay, so please pause the video again. I'd like you to do number 4, the sentence from number 4 and number 8 by yourself. If there's 2 subjects, then put 2 passive forms. Okay, so please pause and write number 4 and number 8, the whole sentence in passive, and then we'll check together. Okay, when you're ready, we can check. So we start with next. Now our subject is electric mixer. We start with an. A verb is used. Okay, now we can use to infinitive. To beat the mixture for about 45 seconds. okay, until a pulp. So here we can use passive again, until a pulp is formed. If you said until it forms a pulp, it's okay to use a different structure in the same sentence as well. Okay, so you can use passive and active together to give some variety as well. So here, if you said until it forms a pulp, okay, that would be a good description as well. Okay, let's look at number 8. Then, okay, so we can say a rolling pin is used again to press, but we can change it around a little bit. So we can say then, and we can start with a the paper. Then the paper is pressed down, and we can use with a rolling pin. Okay, so if you said then a rolling pin is used to press down the paper, that would be fine as well, but we can change the structure and use with instead. Okay, so then the paper is pressed down with a rolling pin, and any excess water is forced out. So here we can use the passive again. Okay, so this is one way to write it. If you wrote it differently, starting with the rolling pin, that would be fine as well. Okay, so then a rolling pin is used to press the paper down and force out any excess water. All right, so this is how we write in passive to give a description rather than an instruction. You don't want to write your whole task 1 in passive, so please use some variety. So you can change between a passive structure and a present simple structure like this one is here. Okay, so you want to use a variety of different structures. Just remember that to describe a process, you're using the present tense. Okay, you're not using a past tense. Okay, so let's quickly look at, imagine that this is the final task 1. Okay, so we start with our introduction. The diagram explains how recycled paper is made from old newspaper, all right? Then we would usually start a new paragraph. So remember, you want to have paragraphs. So after the introduction, you'd start a new paragraph. And then your body 1 and body 2 for processes is just describing the different stages in the process. So you can have 1 or 2 paragraphs for this body 1 or body 2. Okay, so 1 or 2 paragraphs. And then what you want to do is use these linking words in order to describe what is happening in your process. Okay, and you can finish off with finally. Okay, so this can either be 1 or 2 paragraphs. Just quickly look at it and tell me what's missing. So remember the structure that we spoke about for task 1. So what is missing? I have my introduction and I have my body 1 and body 2. So what is missing here? And whatever is missing needs to go over here after the introduction. So you can pause and think about it. When you're ready, what is missing and what goes in between here is the overview paragraph. So even when describing processes, we must have this overview paragraph. If you leave it out, if you forget to do this, you're going to lose marks for your task achievement criteria. Okay, so even for a process, we must have an overview. For processes, this must go after the introduction. So let's have a look at what we could write for the overview here at the bottom. So it doesn't go at the end. We want to put it after the introduction. So it would go in over here. Okay, so for the overview, we're writing a brief summary, so just a short summary of the whole process. So before you start writing about each step in detail, we want to put in an overview, a brief summary. So let's think about what are the main stages of this process. Okay, so for this, we don't really want to start with overall. We can think about how many stages there are in the process in order to start. So you could put something like this 9-stage process. Okay, so if you know how many stages are, you could say something like this 9-stage process involves. Now try and think about what are the main things that are happening. If you had to pick 3 of the main steps, think about what those could be. So this 9-stage process involves, and what did they do to the paper? So you can pause the video and think about that. What are the main stages that happened? Remember, we're making newspaper into recycled paper. Okay, so let's think about what the main stages were. So this 9-stage process involves, maybe we could talk about the mixture, soaking pieces of newspaper. This is what we do in the beginning. Mixing them to create a pulp, which is now what happened after they created the pulp. So it involves soaking pieces of newspaper. We could say mixing them with water to create a pulp, which is now what happened to the pulp. Okay. Now think about the 3 things that happened to the pulp. So we could maybe say which is drained, or the first thing that they did to it is soaked, okay, which is soaked, drained, pressed. Let's just try and make it longer so that you can see. Okay, I'll have to finish it on top because I've run out of space. So we could end it off with and left to dry. So it does take some practice to be able to think about how to summarize the process. So you should practice these types of tasks at least once or twice, because you could get it in your exam, okay? So this is what you'd write for the overview, just 1 sentence in order to give a brief summary of the entire process. And remember, you want to put it here after your introduction, before you describe the process in detail. Okay, so something like this. Think about how many stages there are, and then the main things that happen. This 9-stage process involves soaking pieces of newspaper, mixing them with water to create a pulp, and then what happens to the pulp? It's soaked, drained, pressed, and left to dry. So just think about the verbs that you can use in order to briefly summarize the process. Okay, but as I said, it does take some practice to think of how to write these overview paragraphs. Okay, then you would have a new paragraph and then start your body 1 and body 2. Remember, no conclusion, so you can just end with saying finally and giving the last step. Sorry, just give me 1 second to get back to the main worksheet. Okay, so after you finish writing, there's some things that are important. You shouldn't just finish and then sit there. Once you're finished writing, you should give yourself at least 2 or 3 minutes to read your writing again and check for any mistakes. So these mistakes involve spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes, punctuation mistakes, and also checking if you've left out any important information. Did you leave out any of the stages? Did you forget any of the important words that you're supposed to use, and so on? So please don't just finish and leave it. You need to finish and then go and check. So there's a couple exercises that you can do here in worksheet 3. So I'd like you to do these by yourself, maybe for homework. So you can go and download them from LMS and Flip Class. So this activity over here, you're going to read the sentences and check for any spelling mistakes. In this over here, you're going to have a look at using the correct words. So I'd like you to go through these. You have number 1 to 6. You need to take the word that's underlined and replace it with the correct word. Okay, so sometimes we use the wrong word that's not really accurate for that part of the sentence. And another mistake that we can make that you need to check for is using the correct form. So this is, for example, when you use a noun instead of an adjective, or an adjective instead of a noun, or a verb instead of a noun, and so on. For example, let's look at this sentence. If we say the difference between the two is only 9%. Okay, so different is an adjective. So we don't say the and then an adjective. So think about what could be the correct answer here. So we should be using a noun. This is the adjective form. The noun form is difference. So we should be saying the difference between the two is only 9%. All right, so these 3 activities you can do on your own for homework, spelling, and using the correct form of the word. And this will give you practice with how to check your work for mistakes. So again, this is in the Flip Class section under writing. I'll post this worksheet and the answers so that you can go and do it for homework. All right, so now we're going to move on to describing maps. So this is another possible type of task that you could get for task 1, academic writing. Okay. So often what you get for describing maps is you often get 2 maps, 2 different maps. One that's in the past and one that's either at a later date or in the present. It could also be of the future as well. So you could get 2 or even 3 maps that all look at different times. So what we need to do for describing maps is describe the changes that you can see over time. Often the tense that we use is a past tense, okay? And then if talking about today, a present tense, or if it's a future map, a future tense as well. But a lot of the time we're using a past tense to describe the map that happened in the past. All right, so this is an example of a type of tasks that you could get. The following maps show the changes that have taken place in the center of a town since 1700. Now, this is what you need to do. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So the same as the other type of tasks, you're not just mentioning everything that you can see. I don't want you to talk about this map and talk about every single thing that you can see and this map and everything that you can see, okay? This is not what you're supposed to be doing. What you're doing is, first of all, summarizing, which means you're only talking about the main features and making comparisons. So talking about what's different or what's similar between the two maps. Okay, so again, you're not mentioning everything, but just the main things and comparing them. Okay, so what's different from this map to this map? What has changed? Okay, what are the main changes or what is still the same? Right, so let's have a look at these over here. So we're going to look at how we can talk about changes. And there's a few different ways we can talk about changes. So the tense that's been used here, so they're talking about the hotel. So it's looking 1700, the hotel is over here. And now today the hotel is like this. So obviously the hotel has changed. So we need to think about how we can describe the change that's happened. So let's look at this sentence. They said the hotel has been expanded or extended. Okay, so both of these words mean to make it bigger. So they've added this on to the building. So let's look at the structure. This is the structure that we can use. And again, we're using the passive tense. Now, passive tense can be used in any tense. Okay, passive can be used in any tense. Past tense, present tense. It can also be used in perfect tense, past perfect or present perfect. Okay, remember present perfect talks about something in the past up until the present. So this is what we're talking about here, the past until the present time. So what's happened in the past until today. So this is why we're using a present perfect tense. Okay, and we're using it in passive again to show that we're describing something. So let's have a look at this structure in more detail. So first of all, we start with the subject, which is the hotel. And then we don't use verb to be, we use a perfect tense. So we use has been or have been, okay? So the hotel, because it's singular, has been. If it's plural, the hotels, then we would use have been. So the hotel has been, and then we use the verb 3. So the passive is the same, except instead of the verb to be, we use have been or has been to describe present perfect from the past until today. So from the past until today, the hotel has been expanded, which means made bigger. So let's practice using this tense with Stiegel Farm. So let's have a look at here's Stiegel Farm in the past. Now what's happened in the present? It's not there anymore. Okay, so I want you to pause the video and try write what changes happened with Stiegel Farm. And I want you to try and use this tense structure, this sentence structure. Okay, so pause the video and try and write about the change that's happened to Stiegel Farm using subject, has or have been, plus verb 3. Okay, so once you're ready, play the video. So our subject, Stiegel Farm, it's singular, so has been. And what's happened to it? It's gone. So we could use the verb removed. Okay, so it has been removed. Or we could say now there's a road there instead. So if it's gone and there's something else there, we use replaced by. Okay, so Steegle Farm has been replaced by, and what's there now? A road. Okay, so either we just say it's gone or we say what is there now. So it has been replaced by a road. All right, now let's go to the next one. What about the roads? So we can see there's been some changes with the roads. So I want you to pause again, use the same structure, and I want you to write about the changes that have happened with the roads. So when you're ready, you can play. Now it's roads, plural, so we use have been. Okay, now we want to use an adjective to describe what's happened. They've been made bigger, so we can use the word expanded, like we did with the hotel. So the roads have been expanded. We can also see there's been some changes, like some things have been added here. The traffic lights, the crossing, the round. My internet disconnected and I'm recording online. So let's go back, right? And we're talking about the roads. So I said that we can say have been because it's plural. We can say they're bigger, so expanded. Okay, but there've also been some changes. So we could say they have been modernized. Okay, so there've been some modern changes. They've been modernized, and we can say how they've been modernized, what has been added. Okay, so and traffic lights, lanes, crossing, and a roundabout have been added. Okay, so we can use the structure twice over here. So talk about how what's happened, and then we can mention the things that they added to make this change as well. Okay, so this is how we can talk about changes. We don't, again, you don't want to use this tense for the structure for every single sentence. We want to have some variety. So we can talk about changes in other ways as well by using comparisons. So for example, we could say, talking about the roads again, the roads in 1700 were smaller. So we're using comparisons. Than today, or than in the present. Okay, so we can also use comparative language to talk about changes as well. Or you can say the other way around. Today, the roads are bigger than in the 1700. So this is two ways. Either we can use this structure or we can use comparatives as well. So let's try something else with comparatives. Let's have a look at the houses. So here we have houses, and here we have houses as well. Okay, so pause the video. I want you to describe the changes that's happened with the houses using comparatives. So when you're ready, you can play. And let's start with today. Okay, obviously there's a few ways to write this. I'm going to start with today. So today the houses are smaller. Okay, and we can say then in 1700. And what else has changed? So they're smaller and there are many more houses. Okay, so we could also say the houses are smaller and there are many more of them than in 1700. All right, so again, we're using comparatives to talk about change. So if you want, you can pause the video and practice with the other things that we can see on the map. I'm not going to do them with you, but if you think you need some more practice, pause and write a sentence using all of these, either using this structure in the passive, or you can use comparatives as well. Okay, so let's move on. So another thing that's important is using the correct feature. So features are the things that we can see on the map. So let's try and complete these sentences using the correct feature on the map. So like with processes, you want to use all the words that they give you on the map. So let's have a look at sentence 1. The something, which is right in the center of the town, has not changed in 300 years. Okay, so this here has not changed. This is just present perfect tense. So we can also use present perfect tense here. So let's have a look. What's in the center of the map that hasn't changed? Okay, so you can see the market square and the church haven't changed, but the market square is what's in the center. Okay, so now we're talking about our comparisons. So here we can use the market square. So like with graphs and tables, you want to be accurate when talking about maps as well. Okay, let's have a look at the second one. According to the 1700s map, there was a something in the right bottom hand corner. Okay, so the right bottom hand corner over here. So there was a house. Okay. Let's do the others. Another feature that has remained the same, so no changes, is the something located in the center to the right of the market square. So pause, think about what that could be. All right, and that is the church. Great. And the last one, a row of something that can be seen in the bottom center of both maps has changed little. So pause the video. What's happening in the bottom center of both maps that hasn't changed much? Okay, when you're ready, you can play and we can see it over here. It is the shops. Okay, so you want to write about the changes, but you also want to write about the things that haven't changed much or the things that have remained the same over time. As we can see in some of these sentences, the way that we talk about what we can see is describing its location on the map. So that's something that you can practice as well. So let's have a look at writing the correct location. So Stiegel Farm, which can be seen where of the 1970s map, is no longer there. So how would we describe where this is? So please pause the video and try and describe this location. So you can see that we always use of. If you're not sure, have a look at sentence 4 in this map, this exercise. Okay, play when you're ready. So can be seen. So firstly, is it at the top or is it at the bottom? It's at the bottom. And think about which side is it on? Is it on the left or is it on the right? So it can be seen at the bottom left-hand corner, or we could say left-hand side of the 1970s map. Right, so when describing a location on the map, there's a few different ways to describe it. Is it at the top or is it at the bottom of the map? Is it on the left or is it on the right? Okay, and then, or is it in the middle or the center of the map? Okay, so we can use all of these to describe the location. Let's have a look at sentence number 2. To the something of the market square is a hotel, which has changed considerably, meaning a lot over the years. So let's look. Here we have the hotel. Oh, here we have the market square. Okay, and they're talking about the hotel. So it is to the left. You must have the. So to the left of the market square is the hotel. All right, so these are ways to the left, to the right, at the bottom, at the top, and maybe the left hand or the right hand corner of the map. So remember, when we use the map, we always say of the. Okay, so when we talk about where the things are on the map, you want to use these different ways of talking about location. Okay, again, you don't have to do it for every single thing you talk about, but if you add location in, then you're adding some new language, which will improve your vocabulary score. All right, let's go back to the main worksheet. So another important thing for maps is describing changes, and we can do this by using a variety of verbs to describe changes. So this is really important, this vocabulary. Again, it'll improve your score for lexical resource using a variety of language. So these are all useful when talking about maps. So if you don't know some of these words, please write them down. Have a notebook, write down a description or take a screenshot when we're finished and try and remember and use these words as well. So what we need to do is match the words in the box to the correct meaning. Let's do the first one together. So to make something bigger. So there's 2 words we can use, and we looked at them right in the beginning when we talked about changes. So to make something bigger, we extend it, or we expand it. Okay. I'd like you to do the rest of them by yourself. So once we've used it, we don't need to use them again. So please pause the video, match the words to their definitions, and then you can play and we'll check together. Okay, so if you're finished, you can play and let's check. So number 2, to make it new again, there's 2 words. We can use the word renovate. Okay, so renovate, like we renovate a house when it gets a bit old and we need to repaint it or fix some things up. To make it modern, the word that I told you already when talking about the roads, modernize. Okay, to take it away and put something in its place, we replace it. To make it better, improve it. To make it smaller, reduce it. Build something in an area where there was nothing. So this is to develop. Okay, so when we use the word develop, it means there was nothing there. Like we say, a new development is happening. There wasn't a house and now we're making it bigger. There was nothing and now we're building a house there. Okay, to put in something totally new, we're adding it. Take something away, remove it. And to build something again is to reconstruct it. Okay. So reconstruct means that the house was there, okay? And then it was taken away, and then it was built again in the same place. That is what reconstruct means. It was there, taken away, and built again. Okay, so again, these are really important. If you got any of them wrong or you don't know these words, write them down and practice using them. So now we're going to practice using them in these sentences. So I have the words at the top here, and I want you to put them into the correct place in the sentence. Okay, you can see again here we've used the present perfect passive. So let's do number one together. So Good Farm has now been something with a car park. So meaning it was taken away and something else was put there. So here we can use the word replaced. Okay, and have a look here. We always use replaced with, or we can say replaced by as well. So both of these prepositions is correct. Okay, please pause the video. Fill in the missing words. Sometimes more than one word is possible. When you're ready, play and I'll check the answers with you. Right, so let's check number two. The hotel has been, so it says it's twice its size, so it's been made bigger. So either we use extend. Okay, remember we need to use verb 3 because it's present perfect passive. So either we can use extended or expanded. Okay, number 3, all of the roads. So now we can't just put one adjective, we need to fill in the whole tense. Okay, so the roads have been, either you can say improved, or we could say modernized. Okay, number 4, talking about the zebra crossing the roundabout, which I mentioned already. So we need to say have now been, and then we need a verb added. Okay, and the surfaces, again, we need have been, and we can say improved here or modernized again. Okay, so if you need some more practice using the structure, that's something that you can do in your own time. Have a look at maps and practice writing about changes using this passive structure. Okay, last one, number 5, the stables, something and replaced with. So if it's replaced with something, it needs to be removed first. So again, have been removed. Okay, so if you got any of these wrong, maybe you need to just have a look at the definitions again of these words and just practice using this tense. Okay, the last thing we're going to do for this video lesson is have a look at an example of the whole task 1 map task. Okay, so again, we want to have at least 2, 3, or even 4 paragraphs. You need to divide it into paragraphs. I would use 3 paragraphs, okay? And it needs to be clearly organized, which means we need to have a main topic for each paragraph. So first of all, let's look at the first sentence. Okay, there's some mistakes here that have been underlined. We're going to check those afterwards. First of all, let's look at the structure. So it says the 2 maps allow us to see the changes in one small town over a 300-year period. So this is the first sentence. So I'd like you to tell me what is this sentence. So pause the video. What is the first sentence that should come at the beginning of every task one? Okay, and the first sentence needs to be our introduction sentence, okay, which is just a paraphrase of the question. So look here, they said a 300-year period. So they've taken from 1700 until today. Okay, right now it would be a bit more than 300, it'd be 320, 321. Okay, so you can summarize the whole time period by looking at how many years it's been. Now let's look at the second sentence. It says, in the 1700s, the town was relatively small and consisted of a few farms and houses gathered around a central marketplace and church. Transport was restricted to horses at the time, so the roads were very basic. Having said that, the roads were clearly marked and the river had a bridge running across it. So you can see they haven't talked about any changes yet. They're just briefly describing one of the maps. So remember, we have introduction, we have overview, we have body one, body two. So I want you to pause and read this again and tell me, what is this? Is this an overview paragraph? Does it talk about all the main changes? Or is this a body paragraph? Okay, so pause it. Is this the overview or is this the body paragraph? Okay, so as you can see, they're not summarizing anything. So this is not the overview. This is the body one. Now I want you to read it again and think about what is the main topic of this paragraph. So for each main paragraph, we want to have a main topic. So pause again, read it. What is the main topic of this body paragraph? Okay, and hopefully you said the 1700s. So for describing maps, we don't put the overview after the introduction. We put the overview at the end. So let's have a look at the overview sentence, which is at the end. So it says, while in 1700, there were few houses, now there are rows of houses and a block of flats instead of stables. A further development is the supermarket and the hotel, which is extending. Okay, so this here is our overview paragraph. So it goes at the end for maps, and it just briefly describes the changes, okay, the main changes that have happened. So again, we don't put it after the introduction, we put it at the end. We describe the changes in detail, and then we summarize the main changes. Okay, so this leaves the body two paragraph over here. So I'd like you to read it, pause the video, and think about what is the main topic of this body two paragraph. So when you finish reading it, you can check with me. And the main topic here is present day, but we're also making comparisons. So we're making comparisons between the present day map and the 1700s map. So this is one way of doing it. We start by describing the first map that we can see. We don't talk about any changes yet. We just describe what we can see in the first map. And then in the second paragraph, we start to talk about the present day map and how it is different from the previous map. Okay, so they said in the present day, a great deal is changing. Then they speak about the changes. Okay, first the roads have been improved, traffic lights, zebra crossings were added, there's extra roads. They added a car park, okay. The farm has been replaced by a car park. They speak about the housing and the changes that have happened with that. Okay. So this is what we want to do. First, talk about the first map, talk about the changes that are happening, and then give a brief summary of the main changes that you can see. Now, as I said before, when you're finished, you don't want to just stop writing. You want to read it again and have a look at some of the mistakes that you've made with grammar, with punctuation, and so on. So let's have a look at what I've underlined in red. I'm not going to do all of them. Let's just do a few. So let's have a look at the first one over here. So the two maps, it says allows us to see the changes. So this is incorrect. So you can pause the video, think about how we could correct this. So you need to look at your subject. So the two maps. So the subject is plural. So it should be allow us. Okay, this is just present simple. So for plural, there's no S. Let's look at the second one here. It consists of. In the 1700s, the town was relatively small and something of a few farms. So pause the video, try and correct this. So we're talking about the map in the past, in the 1700s. So you should be using a past tense here, and consisted of a few farms. Okay, so please try and watch out for grammar mistakes. Okay, let's have a look again at number 3. So transport restricted to horses at the time. So think about, what is this? Transport restricted. There's a word that's missing. So pause the video, try and correct it. When you're ready, you can play. So it should be was restricted. Why? Because this is a passive tense. This is past passive tense. Okay, because we start with the subject. Transport can't restrict itself. Somebody restricts it. So it's passive. It was restricted to. Right, let's do one more. In present day, a great deal changing. So pause the video. What should this be? So when you're ready, play has changed. Okay, why? Because again, we're talking about from the past to the present. So we should be using present perfect. Okay, I'm going to stop there. You can do the rest of them by yourself for homework, check the answers. What we should be doing here is using a variety of tenses. So you can see we've used present simple, we've used past simple, we've used past passive, we've used present perfect. Okay, so in order to get a good score from your grammatical range and accuracy, you want to use a variety of tenses. Okay, don't think about it too much when you're writing. This is something that you can check afterwards. So just write, try not to write everything in the same tense. Check, have I added some passive in here? But a good way to do this is when you're finished to go back and to ask yourself, do I have lots of different tenses? If the answer is no, think about what you can change. Okay, so if you've written everything in one tense, you can go and change it to make it more interesting and have more variety of tenses and sentence structures. Okay, so please leave some time at the end to just check your grammar, your spelling, your punctuation, and also if you've included everything that you needed to include. Okay, so thanks for watching, everyone. That's the end of task 1. So we've practiced 4 different types of tasks, or 3 different types of tasks describing maps, charts, pie charts, graphs. So those are all similar. Then we have describing a diagram, which is a process, and describing a map, where often we need to look at the changes between 2 maps. Okay, so please watch this video. If you need to, you can watch it again, pause, answer the questions as you go along. And for Saturday morning's lesson, we're going to focus only on academic writing task 2. Okay, thanks for watching, everyone, and goodbye.